I, 62, F, have one son, Leo, 38, M, who is a self-made millionaire. Or rather, that is the story he tells everyone. The truth is a little more complicated, a tapestry woven with my late husband's hard work and my own quiet sacrifices. But I never felt the need to correct the record. A mother's pride is a powerful thing, and seeing him succeed was enough for me. Or it was, until this past Easter. The whole family was gathered at the villa, the beautiful seaside home where I have lived for the past 10 years, ever since my husband, Robert, passed away. It was supposed to be a happy day. My grandchildren were running in the garden, their laughter mixing with the sound of the waves. The meal was winding down when my daughter-in-law, Fiona, raised her glass. She had a smile that never quite reached her eyes, a polished veneer I had never managed to get past. She always made me feel like a quaint old piece of furniture they kept around for sentimental reasons. "A toast," she said, her voice clear and carrying across the long oak table. "To Leo, for his incredible generosity, for providing this stunning place for us all to gather. We are all so lucky to have you." I felt a familiar, dull ache in my chest. It was not the first time she had framed things this way. Leo beamed, accepting the praise as his due. He caught my eye across the table and gave me a little wink, as if letting me in on a charming secret. Then he said the words that broke something inside me. He spoke them casually, with the easy confidence of a man who believes he owns the world and everything in it. "You like the villa I let you use, Mom?" he asked, his voice laced with a playful, patronizing tone. "It's a nice place to retire, isn't it?" The chatter around the table died down. Everyone looked at me. They saw me as the grateful matriarch, living out her twilight years in a gilded cage provided by her successful son. I felt the color drain from my face. It was not just the public erasure of my husband's legacy. It was the word let as if I were a tenant, as if my presence was a temporary privilege he could revoke at any moment. This home, the one Robert and I had planned together, the one bought with the money he left specifically for my security, was now just a bauble Leo used to display his wealth. I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw a stranger wearing his face. I saw Fiona's ambition reflected in his eyes. I knew in that moment that my quiet acceptance was over. He had not just insulted me. He had dishonored his father's memory. That was a line I would not allow him to cross. I managed a tight smile. "It's a lovely home, dear," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Your father had wonderful taste." Fiona's smile faltered for a second. Leo's expression tightened. He did not like the reminder. He preferred the narrative where his success sprang from nothing, a testament to his singular genius. The meal ended shortly after that, the atmosphere strained and uncomfortable. I knew I had to do something. I just did not know what yet. That night, sleep would not come. I wandered through the quiet rooms of the villa, my hand trailing along the cool plaster walls. Every corner held a memory of Robert. I remembered us standing on the empty plot of land, the architect's plans spread out on the hood of our car. Robert had been so excited. He had turned to me, his eyes shining. "This is for you, Helen," he had said. "A place where you'll always be safe. A place of peace." Leo's words echoed in the silent house. "The villa I let you use," the phrase was a stone in my gut. It was a deliberate act of rewriting history, of claiming ownership not just of a property, but of my life, my security. Fiona was the architect of this narrative. I was sure of it. She had been chipping away at my position in the family for years, subtly reframing me from the respected mother to the dependent elder. Leo, blinded by his own ego and her influence, had become her willing mouthpiece. I went into Robert's old study, a room I had kept mostly as he left it. The scent of old books and his faint, lingering scent of pipe tobacco usually brought me comfort. Tonight, it felt like a sanctuary under siege. I sat at his large desk, my fingers tracing the worn leather of his chair. I needed to find a way to reclaim the truth. Not just for my own dignity, but for Robert. He had worked his entire life to provide for us, to ensure I would never have to worry. He would be horrified to see his legacy twisted into a prop for his son's vanity. My eyes fell upon a row of old, leather-bound photo albums. I pulled one down, its pages filled with pictures of a younger Leo. Leo on his first bicycle, Robert running alongside, holding him steady. Leo at his high school graduation, his arm around me, both of us beaming. Where had that boy gone? The one who knew the value of family, of love, of a foundation built on something more than money. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. This was not just about a house.
It was about respect.
It was about the fundamental truth of our family, a truth Leo and Fiona were trying to bury under a mountain of their own self-importance. They had underestimated me. They saw a quiet widow, a relic of a bygone era. They did not see the woman who had stood by Robert as he built his business from the ground up, the woman who had managed the family's finances with a shrewd and careful hand for 40 years. They had forgotten who I was. I decided then and there, in the quiet solitude of my husband's study, that I would have to remind them. The next morning, I called my oldest friend, Sarah. She had been my maid of honor, the godmother to Leo. She knew our family's history as well as I did. I told her what had happened at the Easter dinner, my voice cracking as I repeated Leo's words. He said what? Sarah's voice was indignant on the other end of the line. He let you use it? That ungrateful little brat. After everything you and Robert did for him. I don't know what to do, Sarah, I confessed. I feel so erased. You are not erased, Helen, she said firmly. You are angry. And you have every right to be. This has Fiona's fingerprints all over it. She's been playing this game for years. I know, I whispered. But Leo is my son. I don't want to start a war. Sometimes a war is necessary to protect your own country, Sarah replied, her voice softening. This villa is your country, Helen. Robert gave it to you. It's yours. You need to find the paperwork, the deed, whatever you have. You need to remind him, legally and factually, who is in charge. Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. She was right. I could not fight this with emotion. I had to fight it with facts. I had to find the proof that would dismantle their false narrative piece by piece. After we hung up, I felt a flicker of my old self return. The determined, capable woman who is not afraid to stand her ground. My grief over Robert's death had softened my edges, made me more inclined to seek peace at any cost. But the cost had become too high. I decided to start in the study. Robert was a meticulous man. He kept records of everything. I spent the rest of the day going through his old filing cabinets. The task was overwhelming at first. Decades of tax returns, business receipts, and old letters. But as I worked, a sense of purpose settled over me. I was not just sorting through paper. I was searching for the truth. Late in the afternoon, tucked away in a folder labeled Personal Estate, I found it. It was not the deed itself, but it was something almost as important. It was a handwritten letter from Robert to me, dated a few months before he passed. He had known he was getting sicker. My dearest Helen, it began. If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and I am so sorry to have left you. I want you to know that the villa is yours, completely and without question. The funds used to purchase it were from the sale of my early stock portfolio, the one I always called our future. I have set it up so that the title is solely in your name. It is not part of my general estate. It is a gift from my heart to yours. It is your home. Never let anyone make you feel like a guest in it. Your independence was always my greatest priority. Tears streamed down my face as I read his words. It was like hearing his voice again, a message of love and reassurance from beyond the grave. He had foreseen this. He had known that my position might one day be challenged, and he had taken steps to protect me. The letter was not a legal document, but it was a roadmap. It told me that a clean title existed, solely in my name. I just had to find it. My first thought was the safe deposit box at our old bank downtown. We had kept all our most important documents there. The key had to be somewhere in the study. I searched Robert's desk, my fingers exploring every little drawer and compartment. In the very back of a small drawer filled with old cufflinks and tie pins, I found it. a small, brass key on a simple metal ring. Holding that key felt like holding a weapon. It was the first step toward taking back my life. I knew this would not be easy. Confronting Leo would be one of the hardest things I had ever had to do. But Robert's letter had given me the strength I needed. I was not just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for his memory, for my future, and for the truth. And I was a fight I intended to win. The following Monday, I drove to the bank. It felt strange to be doing this alone. Robert had always handled these kinds of official errands. Walking into the grand, marble-hallied building, I felt a pang of insecurity. This was Leo's world now, a world of high finance and important people. But then I clutched the key in my pocket and remembered Sarah's words. This was my country. The bank manager, a young man named Mr. Harris with a slick haircut and an expensive suit, looked at me with polite condescension when I explained I needed to access my safe deposit box. "Of course, madam," he said, his tone suggesting it was a quaint and unusual request. "Do you have your key and identification?" I produced them, and he led me down a carpeted hallway to the vault. The massive steel door swung open with a heavy, satisfying thud. Inside, the air was cool and still. He used his own key along with mine to open the small metal door marked with our box number. He then slid out a long, heavy box and placed it on a table in a small, private viewing room. "Take all the time you need," he said, before closing the door and leaving me alone. My heart was pounding as I lifted the lid. The box was filled with documents, neatly organized in manila folders. There was my marriage certificate, Leo's birth certificate, and the original deed to our first family home. And then, at the very bottom, in a large, waterproof envelope, I found it. The title deed to the villa. I spread the thick, official-looking paper out on the table. My eyes scanned the legal jargon until I found the relevant section. Owner of record, and there it was, in clear, printed letters. Helen Marie Swanson, my name. And my name alone. There was no mention of Robert, no mention of a trust, and certainly no mention of Leo. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. It was true. Robert had protected me. The villa was mine.
Legali, unequivocali, mine.
Leo had no claim to it whatsoever. His words, "The villa I let you use," were not just an insult. They were a complete fabrication. A lie he had been telling himself and everyone else for so long that he had probably started to believe it himself. I sat there for a long time just looking at the document. This piece of paper was my shield and my sword. But how to use it? A direct confrontation seemed inevitable, but I needed to be smart about it. A simple, "You're wrong, it's mine," would just evolve into a shouting match. He would accuse me of being confused or senile. Fiona would back him up, her face a mask of false concern. No, I needed more than just the deed. I needed to understand the full scope of their deception before I made my move. As I was carefully placing the deed back into its envelope, my hand brushed against another set of documents in the box. It was a thick folder labeled Robert Swanson Family Trust. I had all but forgotten about it. Robert had set it up years ago, a complex financial instrument designed to manage his assets and provide for me after he was gone. Leo, with his business degree, had been named the trustee, responsible for managing the funds and ensuring I received my monthly stipend. I had never questioned his management of it. I trusted him. A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. If he was willing to lie about the ownership of the villa, what else had he been lying about? I pulled out the trust documents. They were dense with legal and financial terminology I did not fully understand. But I did understand the summary page at the front. It detailed the principal assets of the trust, stocks, bonds, and a significant cash reserve. It also stipulated the terms. The trustee was to manage the assets prudently and provide for my living expenses, medical care, and general well-being, with the remainder to pass to Leo upon my death. On a whim, I took out my phone and took pictures of the deed and the first few pages of the trust agreement. It felt clandestine, like I was spying on my own life. But my instincts were screaming at me that something was wrong. I put the original documents back in the box, locked it, and left the bank, my mind racing. The simple clarity I had felt upon finding the deed was gone, replaced by a growing, sickening suspicion. The problem might be much bigger than a single, arrogant comment at a family dinner. That evening, I called Leo. I tried to keep my voice light and casual, the concerned mother just checking in. "Hello, dear," I said when he answered. "I was just going over some old paperwork and got a little confused about something. I was hoping you could clarify." "What is it, Mom?" he asked, his voice distracted. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard in the background. He was working, always working. "It's just about the property taxes on the villa," I said, choosing a topic that seemed innocuous. "I was thinking about them, and I realized I've never actually seen a bill. I assume you take care of that through the trust." There was a brief pause on his end. "Yes, of course, Mom," he said, his tone a little too smooth. "It's all handled automatically. You don't need to worry about a thing. That's what I'm here for." "Oh, that's a relief," I said. "I just like to keep my own records, for peace of mind. Could you perhaps send me a copy of the last tax statement? Just so I can put it in my files." The silence on the other end of the line stretched on for a few seconds too long. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "Mom, really, it's not necessary," he finally said, his voice taking on that familiar, patronizing edge. "It's all very complicated financial stuff. You'll just get confused and start worrying for no reason. Let me handle it. That's my job, to make sure you're taken care of." "I'm not worried, Leo," I said, my voice firmer now. "I just want a copy of the bill that is paid for my house." "I don't think that's an unreasonable request." "It's not your house, Mom, it's my house," he snapped, his patience clearly gone. "I bought it for you. The bills are in my name, because I pay them. It's all part of the support I provide for you." My blood ran cold. He said it so easily, so confidently. The lie was so ingrained, he did not even hesitate. "I see," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for clarifying, Leo. I have to go now." I hung up the phone before he could reply, my hand shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. It was worse than I thought. He was not just claiming credit for the villa. He was actively claiming ownership. He had likely been telling banks, business partners, and the government that this multi-million-dollar property was his asset. My home. I felt a surge of nausea. How deep did this go? I looked at the photos on my phone of the trust agreement. The phrase, "manage the assets prudently," seemed to mock me. I had a terrible feeling that his idea of prudent management and my late husband's were two very different things. The conversation with Leo was a turning point. The hurt I felt was now eclipsed by a cold, hard anger. This was no longer just about setting the record straight. This was about protecting myself from my own son. The trust he had broken was not just a legal document. It was the sacred bond between a mother and her child. The next day, I made an appointment with a lawyer. Not the family lawyer we had used for years, a man who played golf with Leo every other weekend. I needed someone new, someone with no ties to my son, someone whose only loyalty would be to me and to the truth. Sarah recommended a woman named Margaret Atwood, a sharp, no-nonsense estate lawyer in the next town over. Walking into her office was like stepping into a different world. It was small, tidy, and unpretentious. Margaret was a woman in her late 50s with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. She listened patiently as I recounted the story, starting with the Easter dinner and ending with my phone call with Leo. I showed her the photos of the deed and the trust agreement on my phone. She looked at the picture of the deed and nodded slowly. "Well, this is straightforward," she said. "The property is in your name. It is legally yours. Your son has no claim to it, and his assertion that he owns it is, to put it mildly, fraudulent. So what can I do?" I asked. "Legally, you can do whatever you want," she replied. "You can sell it. You can mortgage it. You can live in it for the rest of your life and leave it to whomever you choose in your will. Or you could give it away tomorrow. It is your asset to control." Her words were empowering. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of control returning. "But there's another issue here," Margaret continued, her expression turning more serious as she looked at the photo of the trust document. You said your son is the trustee of your husband's family trust. Yes, I said. He manages everything, and you receive a stipend from this trust for your living expenses. Yes, every month. It's deposited directly into my bank account. Margaret leaned forward, her gaze intent. Mrs. Swanson, a trustee has what we call a fiduciary duty. That is the highest standard of care in the law. It means he must act solely in your best interest, without any conflict of interest. He is legally obligated to be transparent. His refusal to show you a simple tax bill is a major red flag. What do you think is happening? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. I can't say for sure without seeing the full financial records, she said. But his behavior suggests he may be mismanaging the trust assets. He could be using the funds for his own purposes, leveraging trust assets for his own business deals, or simply not providing you with the full accounting you are entitled to. His claim of owning the villa might be part of a larger financial deception. He may have listed it as a personal asset to secure loans, for example. The room suddenly felt very cold. The idea that Leo, my own son, would steal from me, from a fund his father set up to protect me, was almost too monstrous to comprehend. But it fit. It explained his arrogance, his possessiveness, his desperate need to control the narrative. His millionaire status, the one he was so proud of, might be built on a foundation of lies and theft. My theft. What do I need to do? I asked, my voice resolved. The time for hurt feelings was over. This was a matter of survival. The first step is to formally request a full accounting of the trust, Margaret said. We will draft a letter from my office to your son, demanding complete financial statements for the trust from the time he took over as trustee until the present day. We will request bank statements, brokerage accounts, tax returns, everything. He will refuse, I said immediately. He will say I'm being difficult or that I'm confused. He may try, Margaret said with a grim smile. But this will be a formal legal request. If he refuses, our next step is to petition the court to compel him to produce the documents and to have him removed as trustee. Judges do not look kindly on trustees who hide information from the beneficiary they are sworn to protect. The path ahead seemed daunting, a legal battle against my own son. But it was also clear. I had to know the truth. I looked at Margaret, this stranger who is now my greatest ally. Let's do it, I said. Draft the letter. Leaving her office, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. The family I thought I had was an illusion. The loving, successful son was a fiction. Underneath it all was a web of deceit that I was now forced to untangle. I drove home to the villa, my villa, and for the first time, I saw it not as a home, but as a battlefield. And I would not surrender it. The letter from Margaret's office was sent by registered mail the next day. The week that followed was one of the longest of my life. I existed in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the explosion I knew was coming. I did not hear from Leo directly. The silence was unnerving. I spoke to Sarah every day. She was my rock. No news is not necessarily bad news, she told me during one of our calls. It means he's taking it seriously. He's probably talking to his own lawyers. They're likely telling him how much trouble he's in. Finally, 10 days after the letter was sent, I received a thick envelope in the mail. It was not from Leo, but from a high-powered law firm in the city, the kind with a long list of partners' names engraved on their letterhead. Inside was a curt, dismissive letter and a stack of glossy, simplified financial summaries. The letter stated that Leo was in full compliance with his duties as trustee and that my request for detailed records was unnecessary and burdensome. The summaries they provided were useless, just high-level charts and graphs with no real information. It was a classic corporate stonewall. But tucked into the back of the envelope was a single sheet of paper that was not from the lawyers. It was a printout of an email, clearly included by mistake. My hands trembled as I read it. It was from Fiona to Leo, sent the day after he received Margaret's letter. The subject line was simply, "Your mother." The email read, "Leo, you need to shut this down now. What is she thinking, hiring a lawyer? Does she have any idea how much of the trust we've sunk into the new development project? If she forces a full accounting, we could lose everything." The villa is listed as collateral on the bridge loan. Tell your lawyers to bury her in paperwork. Tell them to say she's mentally incompetent. Do whatever it takes. We are too close to let your sentimental old mother ruin everything for us. I had to read it 3 times before the words fully sank in. Each sentence was a physical blow. Sink into the new development project. The villa is listed as collateral. Say she's mentally incompetent. I dropped the papers on the table, a strangled cry escaping my lips. It was all true. My worst fears were not just confirmed. They were exceeded. They had not just stolen from me. They had gambled my entire security, my home, on one of their risky business deals. They were willing to have me declared mentally unfit to cover their tracks. This was not just greed. This was a level of cruelty I could not have imagined. I sat there, in the sun-drenched kitchen of my beautiful home, and I felt nothing but ice in my veins. The love I had for my son, a love that had endured for 38 years, withered and died in that moment. He was not my son anymore. He was a predator, and I was his prey. I immediately called Margaret. I read her the email over the phone. There was a long silence on her end when I finished. "Well," she said finally, her voice grim. "They have just handed us the gun and the ammunition. This is a flagrant, undeniable breach of fiduciary duty. And using an asset that is not theirs, your villa, as collateral for a loan is bank fraud. What happens now?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Now we go on the offensive," Margaret said, a new energy in her voice. "We have everything we need. They think you are a weak old woman they can bully into submission. We are about to show them how wrong they are." Over the next few days, Margaret and I formulated a plan. A court battle would be long, expensive, and public. It would achieve the legal aims, but it would not address the deeper, more personal betrayal. It would not give me the justice I truly craved. I did not just want my money back. I wanted them to understand the gravity of what they had done. I wanted them to feel the same humiliation and powerlessness they had tried to inflict on me. And that is when the idea came to me. It arrived fully formed, a flash of righteous inspiration. The villa. It was the symbol of their arrogance, the collateral for their crimes, and the stage for my public humiliation. It was also my greatest weapon. "Margaret," I said during our next meeting, "I don't want to sell the villa. And I don't want to sue them for it. I want to give it away." Margaret looked at me, her eyebrows raised. "Give it away? To whom?" "To a charity," I said, the idea taking root and growing stronger with every word. "Specifically, to a women's shelter. A place for women who are escaping situations of abuse and control. A place where they can feel safe and independent. I want to turn this symbol of my son's greed into a sanctuary for people who truly need it. I want to take the one thing he values most for its monetary and social worth and transform it into something priceless." A slow smile spread across Margaret's face.
"Helen," she said,
"that is the most brilliant and devastatingly effective move I have ever heard." The plan was simple, yet ruthless. We would prepare the legal documents to transfer the title of the villa to the Haven Women's Shelter, a well-respected local charity. But we would not file them yet. The final move had to be delivered in person for maximum impact. We also prepared a second front. Margaret's office drafted a formal petition to the court to have Leo immediately removed as trustee and to freeze the trust's assets. The email from Fiona was Exhibit A. It was an open and shut case. The final piece of the plan was the stage. I decided to call a family meeting. I told Leo the first wanted to discuss a solution to our misunderstanding. I invited my sister, Martha, who had always tried to stay neutral, and her husband. I needed witnesses. I wanted the downfall to be as public as the original insult. Leo agreed to the meeting immediately, his voice dripping with false relief. He thought I was ready to surrender. "Of course, Mom," he said. "I'm so glad you're being sensible about this. We can clear it all up. Let's meet at the villa on Sunday. We can have a nice family dinner, just like old times." "Yes," I said, my voice cold and even. "Let's." The days leading up to that Sunday were a blur of quiet preparation. I met with the director of the Haven Women's Shelter, a wonderful woman named Mrs. Gable. I explained the situation in broad strokes, telling her that I was planning to make a significant donation of property. Her eyes filled with tears as I described the villa. "A place like this, it would change everything for us," she whispered. "It would allow us to help so many more women, to give them a truly safe and beautiful place to heal." Her words solidified my resolve. This was the right thing to do. It was a way to create something good out of the wreckage of my family. It was an act of alchemy, turning pain into hope. On the day of the meeting, I was surprisingly calm. The fear and anger had been burned away, leaving behind a core of cold, clear purpose. I dressed carefully, not in the soft, matronly clothes I usually wore, but in a tailored suit I had not worn in years. I felt like a general preparing for battle. My sister Martha and her husband arrived first. Martha looked nervous. "Helen, are you sure about this?" she asked in a low voice. "Leo is your son. Can't you just work this out quietly?" "The time for quiet is over, Martha," I replied calmly. "You're here to listen. That's all." Then Leo and Fiona arrived. They walked in as if they owned the place, which in their minds, they did. Leo was carrying a bottle of expensive champagne. Fiona was wearing a diamond necklace that glittered under the lights. They were radiating confidence. They thought they had won. "Mom," Leo said, coming over to kiss my cheek. It took all my self-control not to recoil. "I'm so glad we're doing this. I've brought champagne to celebrate putting all this foolishness behind us." "We're not celebrating just yet, Leo," I said, stepping back from him. "Please, everyone, sit down." We gathered in the living room, the room where Robert and I had spent so many happy evenings. I remained standing. I felt more powerful that way. I looked at each of them in turn. Leo, smug and self-assured. Fiona, watchful and tense. Martha, anxious and uncertain. "I've called this meeting because I want to resolve the situation regarding my finances and this house," I began, my voice clear and strong. "Mom, it's all been a big misunderstanding," Leo interrupted, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "My lawyers explained it all. The summaries they sent. The summaries were an insult." I cut him off. "And they forgot to remove a rather illuminating email from Fiona." Fiona's face went pale. Leo's confident smile vanished. I had their full attention now. "An email," I continued, my gaze fixed on Fiona, "in which you suggested I be declared mentally incompetent. An email in which you admitted to using my trust funds for your business projects. An email in which you revealed that you have used this house, my house, as collateral for a loan." Silence. Martha gasped. Fiona looked like she was going to be sick. Leo stared at me, his mouth slightly open, his face a mask of disbelief. "How?" he whispered. "You sent it to me," I said simply. "A clerical error, I suppose." It's amazing how the smallest mistakes can bring the biggest lies to light. I let the weight of that sink in. I watched the panic rise in their eyes as they realized the depth of their exposure. "Now, Helen," Leo started, his voice shaking slightly. "Let's not be hasty. There are complexities, things you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly now," I said, my voice like ice. "I understand that you have been stealing from your father's trust for years. I understand that you have committed fraud by using my property to secure your loans. And I understand that you were fully prepared to have me locked away in an institution to cover your crimes. What I don't understand is how you could do this to your own mother." Leo stood up, his face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. You're an old woman, you're confused. Fiona was just worried about you." "I am not confused," I said, taking a step forward. My voice is rising now. I can feel the years of suppressed frustration pouring out. I am the beneficiary of that trust. I am the sole owner of this house. And you are a thief and a liar. I walked over to the mahogany side table and picked up a large manila envelope. I pulled out 2 documents. "This," I said, holding up the first one, is a copy of the deed to this villa. It isn't my name. Alone. It has always been in my name. I tossed it on the coffee table in front of him. He stared at it, his face ashen. And this, I said, holding up the second document, is a petition that my lawyer, Margaret Atwood, will be filing with the probate court tomorrow morning. It is a petition to have you removed as trustee for gross negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. It asks for a full forensic accounting of every penny you have spent since you took control of the trust. It includes, as Exhibit A, your wife's delightful email. Fiona made a small, choking sound. You wouldn't, Leo breathed, his eyes wide with terror. Mom, you wouldn't do that to me. It would ruin me. The business, everything. You have already ruined everything, Leo, I said. I am standing right in front of him now, my gaze unwavering. You did it when you decided that your greed was more important than your family. You did it when you disrespected your father's memory. You did it when you looked me in the eye and called me a guest in my own home. He collapsed back onto the sofa, defeated. What do you want? He asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. Money? I can pay it back. I'll fix it. Just please, don't file that petition. This is the moment. The power has shifted completely. I can see the desperation in his eyes. He is no longer the millionaire son, but a frightened little boy who has been caught. It's not about the money anymore, Leo, I said softly. It's about justice. And it's about consequences. I reached back into the large envelope and pulled out the final document. It was the title transfer form, signed by me, notarized, and ready to be filed. You are so worried about this villa, I said, my voice calm again. You are so proud to tell everyone it was yours. You used it to build your image, to secure your loans, to make yourself feel important. I held up the document so he could read the name of the grantee. As of tomorrow, this villa will belong to the Haven Women's Shelter, I announced to the stunned room. I have decided to donate it to them in its entirety. I think it's fitting that a home you tried to steal through intimidation and control will now be a place of refuge for women escaping just that. Fiona let out a strangled sob. My sister Martha was staring at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of shock and awe. Leo just stared at the paper in my hand. The color had completely drained from his face. He looked broken. You can't, he whispered. The loan, the bank will call the loan. We'll be bankrupt. That sounds like a you problem, I said, my voice devoid of any sympathy. Not a me problem. I walked over to the fireplace, where a stamped, addressed envelope sat on the mantelpiece. I calmly folded the title transfer document, slid it inside, and sealed the envelope. The address on the front was for the county clerk's office. I am going to mail this now, I said to the silent room. But I will make you a one-time offer, Leo. If you sign a full confession, if you willingly relinquish your position as trustee, and if you cooperate completely with a new trustee my lawyer appoints to recover every single dollar you have stolen, then I will ask my lawyer not to pursue criminal fraud charges against you and your wife. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. And the villa. The villa is gone, I said, my voice final. That is non-negotiable. That is the price you pay for your disrespect. You wanted to be the man who owned this house? Well, now you will be the man who lost it. I didn't wait for an answer. I turned my back on my son and his weeping wife, walked out of the living room, and left the house. I drove to the nearest mailbox and, with a steady hand, I dropped the envelope inside. The sound it made as it fell was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my freedom. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for them. The next morning, Leo's lawyers called Margaret's office, ready to capitulate completely. Leo signed every document Margaret put in front of him. He was removed as trustee, and a court-appointed professional was put in charge of the family trust. The forensic accountants went to work, and what they found was even worse than we had imagined. Leo and Fiona had been living a lavish lifestyle funded almost entirely by the trust. They had funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into their failing development project. They were leveraged to the hilt, and the loss of the villa as collateral caused their house of cards to collapse. The bank called in their loans. They were forced to declare bankruptcy. They lost their own home, their expensive cars, and their country club memberships. Their social circle, which was built on the illusion of wealth, abandoned them overnight. My sister Martha called me a few days later. Her voice was hesitant. Helen, I don't know what to say. I never imagined. You don't have to say anything, Martha, I told her. You were just trying to keep the peace. But some things are more important than peace. He's your son, she said quietly. He stopped being my son the moment he decided to steal from me and have me committed. I replied, my voice hard. The man you see now is just a stranger who caused me a great deal of pain. I did not see Leo or Fiona again. I heard through the grapevine that they had moved into a small, rented apartment in a less fashionable part of the city. Leo had to take a salaried job, working for another company. Fiona, who had never worked a day in her life, was now working as a receptionist. They were humiliated, stripped of the status and wealth they valued above all else. Meanwhile, my life began anew. With the trust back under proper management, I discovered I was far wealthier than I had ever known. The money Leo had been siphoning off was substantial. I sold the rest of the contents of the villa, keeping only a few sentimental items. With the proceeds and my newfound financial freedom, I bought a beautiful, bright condominium in the city, close to Sarah and my other friends. It was smaller than the villa, but it was mine, in a way the villa had never truly felt. It was a home I had chosen for myself. A few weeks after I had moved in, I received a letter. It was from Mrs. Gable, the director of the Haven Women's Shelter. She had enclosed a photograph. It was a picture of the villa, but it looked different. The manicured, showy gardens had been replaced with a children's playground. There were bright curtains in the windows. On the front lawn, a group of women and children were having a picnic, their faces filled with smiles. Mrs. Gable's letter described how the donation had transformed their organization. They had been able to double their capacity. They had a safe place for women to heal, for children to play without fear. She said they had renamed the property. It was now called the Helen Swanson Sanctuary. Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at the picture. This was the true value of that house. Not as a symbol of wealth, but as a beacon of hope. My husband had wanted it to be a place of peace and safety for me. Now it would be that for countless others. I put the photograph on my new mantelpiece. It is the first thing I see every morning, and the last thing I see every night. I have no contact with Leo. The wound is too deep, the betrayal too absolute. Sometimes I feel a flicker of sadness for the son I lost, the little boy in the photo albums. But it is a fleeting feeling, quickly replaced by the profound peace I have found in my new life. I gave away a multi-million-dollar villa, but I gained something far more valuable in return. I regained my dignity, my independence, and my self-respect. Leo thought the villa was his source of power. He was wrong. It was mine. And in giving it away, I showed him, and myself, what true power really is. It is not about what you can take and hold on to. It is about what you can protect, what you can build, and what you can give to those who need it most. He finally learned what it feels like to be small, and I finally remembered how to be strong.